You have seen this film multiple times if you're watching this. You know the opening space battle, the opera house, the operating table. You've clocked the Millennium Falcon on the Coruscant landing pad and noticed George Lucas in blue face paint outside the theater. You think you've seen Revenge of the Sith. You haven't. Not the whole film. Episode 3 released on May 19th, 2005, to the largest opening week in Star Wars history at the time. The first film in the saga to receive a PG-13 rating, the highest-grossing domestic film of 2005. George Lucas had spent 3 years making it, beginning principal photography in June 2003 at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney. The film's mandate was specific: close the gap between the prequels and 1977, show the fall of the Republic, and bring Anakin Skywalker to the operating table. It was the bridge film. It was built accordingly. To execute that mandate, Lucas and ILM produced something of staggering density. The final cut contains 2,151 shots using visual effects, a world record at the time of release. To put that workload in concrete terms, the opening space battle over Coruscant alone required hundreds of individually modeled ships, each with functioning geometry, dynamic lighting, and hull plating that could sustain close-up scrutiny. Every background on every Coruscant landing pad is built to scale in 3 dimensions. When you manage that much visual information across 2,151 shots, things find places to hide. Some details were hidden deliberately, others hid by accident. A few have been sitting there since opening day, and nobody who studies this film for a living noticed them until well into the next decade. The sound team had their own culture of concealment. Matthew Wood, one of 2 supervising sound editors on Episode 3, alongside the legendary Ben Burt, also provided the voice of General Grievous. While working on Grievous's audio character, Wood made a decision that was either creative audacity or a fairly significant prank. He secretly recorded George Lucas's actual coughs without Lucas's knowledge and inserted them into Grievous's audio signature. The Separatist Supreme Commander's hacking cough, in multiple moments across the film, is George Lucas clearing his throat. Confirmed. Lucas's own voice, embedded in his own film without his consent or knowledge. That's the production culture Revenge of the Sith was made in, a team that treated the film's every layer as a space where real things could be hidden, sometimes with permission, sometimes without, and always with craft. When Wood later revealed the detail publicly, the reaction was somewhere between admiration and horror. That the gag made it past Lucas's own ears in the editing room suggests either that Grievous's cough was convincing enough to pass, or that Lucas simply didn't recognize himself. 3 details from that production culture have been sitting in the film since 2005. 2 are possible Easter eggs, one confirmed in geometry and thematic intent, one ambiguous enough that reasonable viewers genuinely disagree. The third is a production error that turned into something more resonant than anything the screenplay explicitly states. None of them are the Millennium Falcon. None of them are the Baron Papanoida cameo. This goes considerably deeper than that. The fight between Mace Windu and Chancellor Palpatine runs approximately 4 minutes. Palpatine screams when he's unmasked, yelps almost, an unhinged animal shriek that shatters the composed politician we've watched for 2.5 films. Then he moves faster than any elderly man should be physically capable of, launching himself across the room in a single leap, igniting a thin red blade and cutting through 3 Jedi Council members so efficiently it barely registers as violence. Again, Kolar goes first. Saesee Tiin is right behind him. Kit Fisto, who lasted longer than the other 2, is dead within the first 20 seconds of actual swordplay. 3 of the most accomplished combatants the Order has produced, eliminated before you've had time to absorb what's happening. Then it's down to Samuel L. Jackson and Ian McDiarmid, circling in Palpatine's office. Lightning comes out of McDiarmid's hands. Samuel L. Jackson's purple blade deflects it, channels it, sends it arcing back until Palpatine's own face begins to blister and collapse under the feedback. Anakin appears in the doorway. Windu has the blade angled at Palpatine's throat. Everything. 30 years of planning, 6 film worth of story architecture, hinges on the next 10 seconds. Your attention is on faces. On Hayden Christensen's anguish in the doorway. On McDiarmid's ruined features pressing into a mask of helplessness. On Samuel L. Jackson's jaw, tight, resolute. The moral clarity of a man who sees exactly what needs to happen. The light in the room is harsh, coming from the window, from the blade, from the arc of lightning still crackling in the air. Nobody watching this scene in any of its 20 years of release has been looking at the hilt of Palpatine's lightsaber. That was the mistake. In multiple shots during this duel, Ian McDiarmid is holding not Palpatine's weapon, but Anakin Skywalker's. Wikipedia, the official encyclopedic reference for Star Wars canon and production detail, documents this explicitly as a blooper. Sidious's lightsaber can sometimes be seen interchanged with the Skywalker lightsaber in the duel scene in Palpatine's office. To understand why this is visible at all, you need to understand how distinct these two props actually are. Palpatine's saber is thin, almost spare, a long, elegant cylinder without ornamentation. It's the weapon of a man who spent decades inside the Republic Senate, who concealed his identity behind the image of a benevolent public servant, who couldn't afford to own anything that looked threatening. The hilt was designed to be overlooked, the kind of thing you'd file away as an ornamental staff before you'd register it as a weapon. Anakin's is the opposite in almost every dimension. Chrome-plated, with a prominent emitter shroud and grip profile that has been visually iconic since 2005. That same hilt becomes Luke Skywalker's saber. It passes from Anakin to Obi-Wan on the lava banks of Mustafar, then to Luke, and retrieved decades later by Maz Kanata. A journey that takes 40 years of in-universe time and 3 trilogies of storytelling. Within the visual language of the franchise, there may not be a more recognizable object. You've seen it in every era of Star Wars. When McDiarmid has it in his hand in Palpatine's office, your eye registers it, but your brain, processing the emotional freight of what's happening, files it under something else and moves on. The production reason for this error is documented and makes complete logical sense in retrospect. Lucas had originally planned for professional stunt performers to execute the bulk of the duel's physical action. Ian McDiarmid, a classical stage actor who was approximately 59 or 60 years old during principal photography, wasn't supposed to be doing extended choreographed sword work. The plan was stunt doubles for the physical demands, with McDiarmid brought in for coverage on close-up moments where his face needed to be visible. Standard practice for exactly this kind of action sequence. Then, Lucas changed the plan. He decided he wanted close-up footage of McDiarmid's face during the fight itself, not inserted between stunt double shots, but within the choreography, genuine physical exertion, real effort, and real expression, rather than a compositing exercise. McDiarmid had to learn the choreography in a compressed time frame. A stunt coordinator went through the sequence with him quickly. He rehearsed under pressure, and he performed. The result was footage Lucas valued enough to use, and the slash film write-up on the scene notes that the choreography, when you know McDiarmid himself is executing it, explains why there's a moment where Palpatine suddenly leaps the width of the room, rather than covering the distance on foot. It was a practical solution to the reality of a non-stunt performer covering ground quickly. The chaos of that compressed production timeline produced the error. Rapid scene changes, multiple prop handoffs, the logistical scramble of executing something that hadn't been fully rehearsed at scale. Several shots were completed before anyone looked at the hilt closely enough to flag the problem. The red blade is correct in every frame. Only the grip profile gives it away. It cleared editing. It cleared the commentary pass. It shipped in the May 19, 2005 theatrical cut, and it has remained in every subsequent release. 2005 DVD, 2011 Blu-ray, Disney+, and the 2025 anniversary theatrical print. 20 years, unchanged. Some fan discussion has noted that an earlier version of the screenplay apparently included a scripted sequence where Palpatine directly controls Anakin's lightsaber during the fight with Windu, a story beat that was modified before filming. That connection can't be verified against primary production documents available in the research. What can be verified is what the accident produced. Palpatine's entire strategic project across the prequel trilogy is to acquire Anakin Skywalker. Every manufactured war, every political maneuver he's been running since the Phantom Menace, every carefully calibrated piece of flattery, every visit to that opera house to whisper about midichlorians, all of it's engineered to bring one specific person into his service and destroy the thing that person represents. In this scene, Palpatine is seconds away from winning, and in multiple shots of that near victory, he is literally holding Anakin's weapon. He already has the instrument of the man he is about to break. He just doesn't know it yet. The prop coordinator on a difficult day grabbed the wrong hilt, and the image that resulted carries more thematic weight than anything explicitly written in the screenplay. That's the first detail. An accidental blooper documented on Wikipedia, present in every version of this film since 2005, visible to anyone who watches the duel at the right speed and looks at the right part of the frame. The red blade keeps your eyes away from the handle. That's exactly why it worked as a mistake, and exactly why it's been sitting there unseen for 2 decades. Approximately 20 minutes after the Windu duel, the film reaches its political climax. Palpatine stands before the full Galactic Senate and announces the transformation of the Republic into the Galactic Empire. 2,000 senators, visible in the sweeping establishing shots as a dense, buzzing hive of pods and platforms extending in every direction, erupt into sustained applause. The camera moves through the chamber with a deliberateness that feels almost documentary, panning across the upturned, cheering faces, lingering on the scale of what's happening. This is the thing Lucas said he was thinking about when he made the film. Rome folding into empire, democracy applauding its own dissolution. He said at Cannes in 2005 that he'd looked at Rome, at revolutionary France, at the specific mechanics by which democracies hand themselves over to someone willing to take them. The camera finds Padme Amidala in her senator's pod. She isn't applauding. She watches with an expression that actors call contained devastation, the face of someone who understands exactly what they're seeing and can't stop it. She says the line, "So this is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause. The shot holds on her face. That face is what 20 years of rewatches have been looking at. Try watching her hair. Tricia Bigger designed every element of Padme's visual identity across all 3 prequel films. She is a Glasgow-born costume designer who served as head of the Lucasfilm costume department from The Phantom Menace through Revenge of the Sith, a continuous engagement spanning 1997 through 2005, 8 years inside the visual mythology of a single franchise. She published Dressing a Galaxy, The Costumes of Star Wars, in 2005 as a comprehensive record of that work. The Senate gown worn in the Empire Proclamation scene, and its accompanying hairpiece, falls squarely within her design scope. The architecture of that hairstyle is documented in Lucasfilm production specifications, preserved in Rebel Legion cosplay reference materials. The hair is pulled back into a flat bun, positioned below a silver-ribbed element described as a halo. From that halo extend what the documentation calls pointed round wings. The hair is woven through the center of the halo. If you diagram that description geometrically, wings arrayed around a central node with a vertical element running through the middle, you produce a shape that fans have widely observed closely resembles the Rebel Alliance Starbird insignia. The same emblem that appears on Rebel pilot helmets, on the surface of the X-Wings, on the medal Luke receives at the ceremony that closes A New Hope, on the Alliance fleet in every version of the original trilogy since 1977. The most recognizable symbol of the Resistance, worn by Padme Amidala in the exact moment she watches the thing the rebellion will spend 20 years fighting be formally created. The comparison entered wide circulation on January 8, 2019, when the Twitter account at SW_holocron posted a side-by-side image of Padme's hairstyle next to the Rebel Alliance Starbird, with the caption, "Did you know? Padme's hair in this shot of Revenge of the Sith resembles the logo of the Rebel Alliance." It spread through Reddit threads, Facebook Star Wars communities, and Threads discussions, and it resurfaces with particular intensity every time the film receives theatrical attention, including throughout the 2025 anniversary re-release. The timing of the 2019 post is worth noting. It had been 14 years since the film released, and this was being treated as a discovery. The fan community is genuinely divided, which is itself informative. Some see an immediate match. Look at the pointed wings flanking a central vertical element, and it's difficult to unsee the starboard once someone has pointed it out. Others find the resemblance unconvincing, arguing that any elaborate ceremonial hairstyle with structural wing elements around a central bun could produce this kind of geometric similarity. One commenter in a Facebook discussion captured the skeptical position directly. "They don't look the same. They have part of the shape, but unless it's identical and not similar, they're not considered the real deal." A Reddit thread from 2012, years before the @SW_holocron post popularized the comparison, noted the symbolism as something observed in passing, with the top reply acknowledging that the Empire symbol was far more commonly noticed in the film than the Rebellion one. Even among engaged fans, the Rebel hair connection was genuinely obscure. The verification problem is real and worth confronting directly. No public statement from Trisha Bigger, in any available interview, including a StarWars.com feature from 2022, confirms or denies that the Rebel Alliance symbol was intentionally incorporated. The Rebel Alliance starbird as a design object existed in the original trilogy by 1977, so the production team in 2002 through 2004 would have been aware of it as a visual element within the franchise. Awareness isn't design intent. Intent requires someone to say so, and no one has. What doesn't require designer confirmation is the dramatic context of the image. In George Lucas's own development notes and statements documented across the film's production, he was explicit about Padme's role in the arc beyond what ended up on screen. He said in interviews that much of what he cut from the third prequel involved Padme's political activity, the conversations among senators, the formation of what would become the Alliance to Restore the Republic, the specific networks of people she drew together. Lucas's own words, documented across production records. Padme was the person who effectively initiated the Rebel Alliance. He removed much of that material to tighten the film's focus on Anakin, but the intention remained in his mind and in the thematic framing of the character. When he says, in notes about the film, that Padme started the Rebel Alliance, he is speaking about the woman sitting in that Senate pod, wearing something that looks, to a significant number of careful viewers, like the symbol of the alliance she's about to start. Whether Trisha Bigger saw the starbird in her own hairstyle design and kept it deliberately, whether a team that had lived inside Star Wars mythology for 8 years arrived at the shape through unconscious convergence on a visual vocabulary they already inhabited, or whether the resemblance is genuinely coincidental, only the designers can answer that, and they haven't. The honest position is fan observation rather than confirmed Easter egg. Go back to the scene anyway, not to Natalie Portman's expression. Watch what's on her head while the applause starts. Then decide for yourself whether that resemblance feels like accident. The third detail is different in kind from the other two. You can't see it. You have to listen. Ben Burtt has been building Star Wars' sonic universe since George Lucas hired him in 1975. His approach is consistently biological. He goes looking for organic sounds from the actual world and manipulates them until they become something that feels simultaneously alien and deeply human. The lightsaber hum he assembled from 2 sources: the sound of an old 35mm projector motor at USC, where Burt was still a graduate student working the projection booth, blended with the electromagnetic hum that a microphone picked up when he accidentally walked it past a television set's picture tube. Those 2 sounds, combined in equal measure, became the foundational lightsaber tone. To give it movement, the whoosh and sweep of a blade in motion, He played the combined sound through a speaker in a room and waved a microphone through the air near the speaker, letting the Doppler effect do the rest. He told the story of discovering that hum decades later. He said he could already hear the sound in his subconscious from the moment he read the script and saw Ralph McQuarrie's concept paintings. He hadn't made the lightsaber yet. He already knew what it sounded like. R2-D2's vocabulary of whistles and electronic chirps took a different path. Burt initially recorded children and babies, hoping to capture something communicative and unguarded. But small children are, as he diplomatically put it, notoriously difficult to get a performance from. He ended up doing it himself, his own voice, processed through a synthesizer and keyboard, combined with electronic sounds until R2 emerged. That gives Burt the somewhat remarkable distinction of contributing his voice to two of the saga's most iconic characters in completely different registers. And Darth Vader's breathing, one of the most recognizable sounds in the history of cinema, is Burt inhaling and exhaling through a scuba regulator. He confirmed this in interviews. The script described Darth Vader as having a respirator, some kind of breath mask with a life support system. Burt went to a dive shop, recorded different scuba tanks with regulators at different breathing rates, using a small microphone stuffed inside the valve to capture a magnified recording of the mechanical opening and closing. He slowed the recording down and edited the breath rhythm to synchronize with James Earl Jones's speech patterns. The result was a sound design decision so elemental to Vader's identity that it's difficult to imagine the character without it. The two-syllable rhythm of machinery performing a biological function. The quality of something struggling to live inside the body it's trapped in. What Burt has also documented, in interviews about the very first Star Wars, the 1977 film, is that his original concept for Vader's audio was considerably more elaborate than what made it to audiences. Those early experimental mixes included mechanical sounds whenever Vader moved his head, whirring and clicking with each turn, and an audible heartbeat. He described the result of those experiments. In some experimental mixes we did, he sounded like an emergency room. Everything except the breathing was cut for 1977. It was too much, too busy, too distracting from the presence the filmmakers were trying to build. The heartbeat, in A New Hope, was a concept that was tried and abandoned. That's the 1977 story. Whether it has a sequel, 28 years later, in the scene that begins Vader's story rather than extending it, is where the research runs into the boundary between documented fact and carefully observed uncertainty. Multiple listeners, paying close attention on headphones to the transformation sequence in Revenge of the Sith, have reported hearing a human heartbeat in the audio track. The sequence itself runs from the moment Palpatine arrives on Mustafar's surface and finds Anakin's burning body, through the assembly of the suit on Coruscant, the prosthetic legs locked into place, the arms secured, the chest plate fitted, the black helmet descending. The final image of the sequence is the mask from the inside, a lens flare resolving into darkness, then the filter of Vader's breathing apparatus imposing itself over the world outside. John Williams's Battle of the Heroes isn't playing during this assembly. There is no music. The ambient sound design carries the scene. The hiss of machinery, the soft mechanical sounds of the suit being fitted, the clinical quiet of an operating room built for one. And underneath it, listeners describe hearing a heartbeat. A human one, irregular in the way organic sounds are always slightly irregular, distinct from the machine-regular rhythm of Vader's mechanical breathing. Present through the assembly, gone at the moment the mask seals. What follows is only the first breath of Darth Vader. Early blog posts from 2007 document this observation. 2 years after the film released, someone writing about Star Wars sound design mentioned it as a detail worth noting. Reddit threads from 2018 and 2019 surface it in more detail. YouTube uploads exist where the person posting treats the discovery as genuinely new to them. Thank you to Nick Moore for bringing this to my attention after so many years. This is incredible. Has anyone ever noticed this? That framing, the sense of encountering something rather than retrieving something already known, suggests the detail circulates through pockets of the fan community rather than as common knowledge. A Reddit post from the same period frames it with a specificity that gives the emotional interpretation its sharpest edge. When Anakin and Padme die in Revenge of the Sith, they share a heartbeat. The heartbeat goes out when the Vader mask goes on. No transcript from any interview with Ben Burtt or Matthew Wood has been located that confirms the heartbeat was a deliberate editorial choice for the Episode 3 transformation sequence. No DVD commentary moment from the November 2005 release featuring Lucas, McCallum, Rob Coleman, John Knoll, and Roger Guyette surfaces the detail. No passage from J.W. Rinsler's Making of book, published in 2005 with exclusive access to all phases of production. That primary source confirmation, the kind that would settle the question definitively, isn't available. The circumstantial case for intentionality is substantial, though, and worth laying out carefully. Ben Burtt had built a heartbeat for Vader's audio in 1977 and cut it. He knew the idea. It existed in his design vocabulary as something tried, something that had a specific reason for not working in that context. Too much noise, too emergency room, too many competing sounds pulling focus. In Revenge of the Sith, the transformation sequence has none of those competing elements. There's no dialogue, no music. The soundscape is stripped back to near silence, which is itself a significant choice for a sequence this important in a franchise built on John Williams. The space for a heartbeat that would have been crowded out in 1977 is wide open here. Matthew Wood had already demonstrated, on this same film, a willingness to embed unexpected organic sounds in the audio without announcing them. The Lucas cough insertion into Grievous was a real decision by a real sound designer on this real production. The culture of the team included hiding things. Burt's stated approach across his entire career involved finding biological sounds for emotional resonance. If the transformation sequence needed something underneath its ambient quiet to carry the weight of what it was depicting, a human life ending inside a machine body, reaching back to the 1977 heartbeat concept would be exactly the kind of choice these specific people would make on this specific scene. There is also the structural element that the Reddit post identified. Padme Amidala is dying simultaneously. Not in the same room, she's on Polis Massa in a medical bay, having delivered Luke and Leia, and then choosing, in whatever way the film suggests she can choose, to stop. The two deaths happen in parallel. Anakin ceases to exist as a person at the moment the mask seals. Padme ceases to exist as a living person in the same sequence of the film. If there is a heartbeat in the Vader transformation audio, and if it stops when the mask seals, it belongs to both of them. The last thing they share before Vader's breathing takes over everything. The transformation sequence was already built like a death scene before any of this. Look at what the camera does. Sterile overhead lighting, surgical restraints, medical droids performing a procedure, Palpatine watching from the room's periphery with an expression that registers as neither joy nor relief. The staging has none of the warmth or ceremony that cinema conventionally uses to mark an arrival. There's no witness crying, no moment of tenderness. It looks like a post-mortem. It proceeds like one. If you turn the sound off and watch the image, you are watching something end, not something begin. If the heartbeat is there, and multiple listeners across 15 years of careful attention say it's, then the sound design is rendering what the image already shows. Anakin Skywalker dying, not Darth Vader being born. Put headphones on. Go back to the transformation sequence. Don't watch it. Listen to it. Listen underneath the ambient audio, underneath the machinery, underneath the quiet. Then listen for what happens at the exact moment the mask seals. Revenge of the Sith has been in continuous release since May 19, 2005. Its 20th anniversary theatrical re-release in 2025 pushed its domestic box office past $400 million, an audience that keeps returning after 2 decades. ILM's own people are still finding things inside it, which is perhaps the most telling data point about what the film contains. Todd Vaziri, a compositor at ILM who worked on the Mustafar sequence, spent months in 2024 excavating the studio's digital archives to solve a single anomaly that had been circulating online since approximately 2015. A ghostly figure, briefly visible behind Anakin during the lava skiff fight, present for only 2 frames. Fan theories had proposed everything from a deliberate Easter egg planted by a mischievous ILM artist to an actual Force ghost. The theories were fun. The reality was more interesting as a production story. Vaziri retrieved green screen footage that hadn't been accessed in nearly 20 years. He described the process afterward. "I think it took 24 hours to unearth the footage and put it back on our servers. I was so excited. My heart was pounding out of my chest." No one had seen the original green screen footage for nearly 20 years. The footage revealed a stunt rigger in a peculiar shirt standing behind Hayden Christensen and manually operating the green screen lava skiff. The rigger had been successfully composited out during the original post-production process, removed frame by frame, the way all such figures are removed. But during a later round of edge refinement work, when the compositor was creating new garbage mats to clean up motion-blurred boundaries, the rigger's head was inadvertently re-exposed in the paint process. Because the error only became visible when stepping through the footage frame by frame, it cleared every level of quality control. The compositing artist, the compositing supervisor, the visual effects supervisor, the editors, and Lucas himself. Vaziri was clear about what this meant. Nobody that was part of this process ever caught that, and that's how it made it in the movie. He also described what his investigation revealed about the scale of that process. 2,151 effects shots, each one requiring human hands at some stage, each one a layer of decisions and refinements that could introduce new artifacts while solving old ones. "This world is handmade," he said. And little things like this become part of ILM history. The film was handmade at a scale and complexity that made errors inevitable and made deliberate hiding equally possible. The same density of information that let a stunt rigger slip through 2 frames of the Mustafar sequence undetected let a sound designer embed something in the transformation sequence without anyone noticing it in the commentary booth. Let a costume designer produce a headpiece that, from one angle, in one specific shot, looks like a symbol the franchise already owned. Let a prop coordinator hand Ian McDiarmid the wrong lightsaber hilt on a chaotic shoot day and have nobody catch it before the film shipped. All 3 details share the same mechanism. The audience's attention is pulled towards something obvious: the faces, the blade colors, the music, or the conspicuous absence of it. Everything the film wants you to watch is working as intended. The details underneath the details are running on a separate track. None of these were in any review published in 2005. None are in the Rinsler making-of book. None surface in the commentary George Lucas recorded with McCallum, Coleman, Knoll, and Guyot for the November 2005 DVD release. They were just there, in the film, on opening night and every night after it. A wrong lightsaber hilt in a chaotic duel, documented as a blooper, unchanged across 20 years of releases. A headpiece that resembles the symbol of the Resistance, worn by the woman Lucas said started the Resistance, at the precise moment the Resistance became necessary. A sound beneath a sound in the most emotionally stripped-back sequence the saga has, described by careful listeners across 15 years, with no sound designer on record confirming or denying it. The film didn't change. It's the same 140 minutes it was the night it opened. You've been watching a slightly incomplete version of it, not because anything was missing, but because you were looking at the right things for the wrong reasons. Now you know what else to look for, and once what to listen for. Subscribe for more stories like this.